Gabe Nerona was a special advisor on Iran in the Trump State Department. He joins me now along with Zuhdi Jasser, founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. And gentlemen, to you both, thank you so much for coming on. Zuhdi, I want to start with you. It appears that this administration believes that if you remove Hamas from Gaza tomorrow, the Palestinians and the Jews can just live in peace under a rainbow forever. Your thoughts on that?
Well, certainly militarily, that is a first step. They must be decimated and defeated. Yeah. But the ideology, just like Al-Qaeda then gave rise to ISIS, Hamas continued to exist. They're all offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood. The charter of Hamas uses our so-called hadith, which I think is a fabrication, that passage that says, kill a Jew behind every stone. They've never changed that. The anti-Semitism is dripping from everything they say, and they've infused it into the schools. They've infused it into the music. They've infused it into their culture. And by the way, as you mentioned, it's not just in the Palestinian areas that, by the way, we were calling for reform not only across the Arab world in the revolutions, but in the Palestinian area against Hamas. And that never happened because they've monopolized the animation of who their enemy is as being the Jew, the West, America. So they've not been able to have a real revolution for reform in their areas. But ultimately, you're right. It's the global media, Al Jazeera. And we see in our universities the marriage of the red-green axis of the far-left neo-Marxists working in the wokest universities with the Islamists and justifying BLMs of riots across the country. Yes. And you see anti-Semites like Farrakhan working with the Islamists in the Middle East. So we have to start having an offense before we start talking about moral equivalency where they can sit at a peace table and give them a state. So this two-state solution is not possible until they have morality.
That is so well said on all fronts. Gabe, same question to you. Your thoughts on the same subject?
You know, watching the videos that you just played, it reminds me that Hamas is a death cult, just like ISIS was. They don't celebrate life, they celebrate death. And looking at this picture of these kids, that breaks my heart because kids aren't born with hate in their hearts. They're taught it, and they're taught it by this UN UNRWA program. They're in the textbooks, they're taught to hate Jews. And look, we have to wipe this ideology out. It will never be able to coexist with Israel. And the fact is that 52% of Gazans surveyed said that they support solving this conflict through violence. Only 21% said they supported solving this through diplomacy. We can't look at this with rose-colored glasses. We have to be realistic. Yeah. That is the first step in any good policy, is understanding the facts.
Yeah, the reality is what's coming from the White House on this subject. If it were, I'm sure it's they raise their, they probably roll their eyes in Israel when they hear that kind of tone and language. But if anybody were to actually try and solve this the way the White House says you could solve it, it would mean probably relatively quick annihilation for the Israelis. I would estimate if people were that naive going into something like this to believe any of that. Zuhdi, the Palestinians use victimhood to indoctrinate their people. And that's very interesting to me. It's something that we see the American left have become fiercely pro-Palestinian. They use that same kind of tactic here in trying to indoctrinate people. They tell people that they are victims, that they should feel this way, that they should be angry, that they should be militant and violent.
Yeah, this is if you look at the BLM movement 2 weeks ago, as the assaults and the slaughter started, endorsed Hamas as being a self-defense entity, which was just horrifically evil. And yet as part of their mantra, which is they can go around breaking laws and destroying businesses across the country, and yet somehow they're the victims. Somehow Americans are on stolen land, and all of the DEI initiatives are about identity politic. And the Islamists have fed right into that neo-Marxist movement, which is that somehow they are the victims, and Islam is an identity rather than an ideology, which is really what our faith is. Right. And I would tell you that the women's movement in Iran is where there's hope. They're a growing majority that did not endorse any of this nonsense out of the radicalism of Hamas, and actually said they are with the people of Israel for peace and for morality. Yeah. Same thing in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood was defeated in Egypt after 18 months of rule. So I think, as much as you're right, 50 to 60%, even in America, of Muslims support Hamas, which is scary. But the 40% that don't are where the future is, and that will grow if we finally have an offense into the wokist, into the Islamist movement that we've not had any. We've been playing defense for too many generations, and we need to now have an offense of ideas within the Muslim community and not have this bigotry where we expect of them minimal moral agency when in fact we can actually have infusion of positive 21st century ideas.
The scary thing is we're on the defense there, but I mean, so what they believe, the problems that we have there are coming here. So I mean, talk about being on the wrong end of things. We're at a very scary moment just for our own country. Gabe and Zuhdi, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on.